it is almost 7 years to the day in this international break, would you believe it, that Gareth Southgate took over as England manager. So one asks, what should go down as his biggest achievement in that time? Many people have their own views on Gareth. I know you do, Simon. I know I do. I really, really like Gareth Southgate. But hey, how irrelevant is a comment like that? But I mean it, because when he came in several months ago, I think it was back in August, he sat here and did an hour in the studio with me. And I must admit, it didn't make it easy for him, to be fair. And Gareth came through it and dealt with everything that was thrown at him. So basically, where are we at after 7 years with Gareth? I put it to Gareth when he was in here. All right, you went close in Russia, but you went out to the Serbs, if I remember rightly. Croatia, if I remember rightly. You went close at Wembley, but you lost to Italy in the Euros. And then it was a quarter-finals exit in Qatar. So the upshot of all that is there a danger you might be remembered as a glorious failure?
I think that depends on how you define success, because where the team were in 2016 and the sort of team that we went with in 2018, and to get as far as we did in 2018, and people will talk about the opposition and we didn't beat Belgium, but when we played Belgium we'd already qualified, and when we played them again it was a third, fourth playoff where we'd played only 2 days before. So yeah. So you'll always be judged as an England manager on the how you go on in tournaments, and the games where you go out. There'll be an analysis at a level that's beyond anything that any club is going to have. We've of course analysed all of that, and we've improved as we've gone on. You know, we improved from that World Cup in Russia to the Euros. I think we were able to change and be more on the front foot in this World Cup. The profile of the team is changing and evolving. Team is still improving. That's all we can aim to do. We've got to keep aiming to get better. And if you're in those latter stages, in the end, England will win a tournament.
So that was Gareth, and he fronted up, and he's right. You know, you face analysis at an enormous,
politician's answer though,
unprecedented level.
Depends how you look at it. I look at it through the prism of bleeding winning. That's the prism I look at it through. So I think Gareth Southgate gets judged by the opportunity to have been in a box seat, to have won tournaments, to have overcome games, to have been in semi-finals. And our survey says... So with that in mind, the 7-year itch potentially needs to be scratched in terms of he's been here for 7 years. He gets one more shot at it. And if he doesn't win the European Championship, thank you very much. You brought a nice group of relationships with the media. You've managed to harmonise the England camp so we don't have to listen to any ridiculous infighting that went on before about which clubs would sit with one another.
Yeah, but but to be fair, he's done more than that.
What's he done then?
Well, I'll put it up. There's been progression of that. There is no doubt.
Well, it was difficult. I mean, it would have been a masterstroke to have gone backwards. I mean, you couldn't go backwards from Iceland, could you?
Here's Gareth.
We're going to get beat by the Welsh.
This is the most recent thing that Gareth has said in this. He says, we've achieved that changing perception throughout the rest of Europe. We haven't achieved that so much with our own public at times, but it's interesting how we are viewed elsewhere. We want fans
at his own fans.
We want fans to come to Wembley to see goals and exciting performances, and we've had some good nights.
Indeed,
we're going to keep on trying to do that.
Fantastic.
So
win.
He's changed perception. That to me suggests progression. Of that, there's no doubt. Well, okay. They've knocked on the door, Simon. They have.
Okay, so I don't know what the perception of us was in Europe. I don't know what the perception of it was, and he seems to be very well plugged into that. But he's suggesting that our own fans are the outliers, that we are a nation that ultimately looks at things through a half-empty glass prism. That's wonderful if you want to patronise mediocrity. If you want a politician as your football manager, which is what the answer was, depends how you look at it, what eyes you look at it through. Now, we don't want to be crap, right? So if you've gone past the crap phase, which is what we were against Iceland,
but they haven't been
well
crap.
Done. No, they haven't. So that was
under Gareth.
But that was a false equivalency, because that was a poor tournament, and he gets to pick up the reins of it after Sam Allardyce fell on his own sword, right? So you've got Gareth Southgate with an opportunity, not based upon management credentials, based upon the fact he was inside the building with the FA and unlikely to cause them any problems. I would suggest this embarrassment of riches that we've got as footballers, that are there amongst the best centre forwards in the world, arguably the best centre forward in the world, alongside Erling Haaland in terms of Harry Kane. You've got a midfielder in Jude Bellingham. You've got a right back in Kyle Walker. You've got players in that in that team that would be fitting in any team around the world. And very rarely have we been able to say that about an England team, besides the the many myths that were put around the golden generation that Sven Goran Eriksson had.
But he's made them more exciting to watch, hasn't he?
I think he's had the talent to be able to. Well, the argument would be. Here's the alternate argument to Southgate. When you've had an opportunity to go for it with this wonderful group of players, was it exciting when we played the USA? Because I didn't think that was particularly exciting.
No.
It was dreadful. But people will criticise him for saying, when we had the opportunity to go for sides, when we had an opportunity to go for the French, we had them in our sights. And okay, a penalty from Harry Kane misses.
Yeah.
That knocks us out because we don't get an equaliser.
Small margin.
But that margin is about the winning opportunity. And when you've got that resource on the pitch, why wouldn't you utilise it?
Yeah, but Sammy, to be fair, they go for it under Gareth. He says, we were top scorers per game at the World Cup, and we've been top scorers in qualifying for the 2 previous tournaments. We want fans to come to Wembley to see goals. You cannot say fairer than that.
Yes,
goals, hopefully, from Gareth's point of view, that end up winning England games.
It's fabulously impressive that you can beat Iran, right, on the world scale of football teams with 5 goals. That probably means that you've got a higher average. Of course, the argument would be the Argentinians got beat by the Saudis, but they went on and won the World Cup, didn't they? We can whet these wonderful little records, but at the end of it, out we go. Now, do I think he's done lots of good? Yes, of course I do. I think it's not fair to be just one-dimensional and suggest that mediocrity got him an opportunity. Mediocrity at times has kept him away from winning the moment when you had this opportunity against the Italians. And you say it went down to a penalty shootout. It didn't need to go down to a penalty shootout. We should have been able to change to avert the opportunity for the Italians to equalise, to get back into the game that made we had us have a penalty shootout. We shouldn't have picked Bukayo Saka to take a penalty when he's never taken one in his professional career. We should have changed the Croatians in the World Cup semi-final. But we'll give him that one because it was a learning curve. And we'll give it again in the European Championships. And then we play the French in a game where we've got ourselves. We start like we normally do as England, looking at the opposition wide about what they're going to do, then realise that actually they're not that great, and then lay it upon them, get in the game, get an ascendancy, and let the French back in. And why is that? Because that's the psyche that the manager allows. That's the culture that the manager... Now, if that's changed, and he takes it and he brings it to them, and he either goes hard or goes home in this European Championships that comes up, then we'll all live with it. But the question always abounds, is that what happens? Is that what Southgate does? Now, he's a brilliant politician, and he'll answer your questions and he'll field them. But when it comes down to it, like you said to him...
A politician, he's a good manager, Sam. He's a more than good manager.
No, he's an international manager. There's a vast difference. He's not at the top of his managerial career. Once upon a time, the England job was something that was sought after by the best managers in English football. Brian Clough would have given up his opportunities in English domestic football to have managed the England team because he was the best in the country. That doesn't exist. There's no argument that Southgate comes out of international football and drops in a top 6 side. Anyone that makes that argument has bumped their head.
I take it from what you're saying then, nothing other than Kane lifting this trophy above his head in Germany next summer is going to do.
With this group of players...
If he doesn't do that, Gareth needs to walk.
With this group of... No, he should not necessarily walk. He should be asked to get his coat, to use my favourite expression. He will have done lots of good things for English football. He would have re-established what should have been there in the first place. Because it wasn't there in the first place doesn't mean you should reward it for being inserted in now. You have to recognise that what people did before wasn't good enough. Capello and his regime wasn't good enough. Roy Hodgson and his regime wasn't good enough. Southgate has done decent things. He's got rid of these ridiculous factions. I mean,
and you've changed your perception of him in the last 7 years, have you?
I've always felt that he was he's a decent human being. You can't argue that Gareth Southgate...
No, but as a manager, you're bound to it.
No,
because when he came in...
In what way?
It was kind of trial and error when he first came in, wasn't it?
Well, my first perception of him was, how in God's name are you giving the job to a man that managed Middlesbrough in the Championship? Right, and ultimately,
and your perception hasn't changed since then.
No, it has changed because ultimately he's shown himself to be able to operate at this level. But that's not the question at hand. The question at hand is when you have opportunities, not what you did in the past. When you are there and you have opportunities and moments in time, and you've had 3 of them, you have to look at it and say, what's the common denominator? The Croatians were crap in the first half. We were good. They changed. We didn't. We lose 2-1. We play the Italians. We get a lead in the first 5 or 10 minutes through the fullback, the Man United player, Luke Shaw. And all of a sudden, the Italians start building up the momentum, and we watch, and the whole nation's going, for Christ's sake, change something. Bang, the Italians score a goal. We change. Then we go into the European Championships. Into the World Cup.
In the World Cup.
And we have the French in our sights, a good French side, but a French side that we got the measure of in this game. So why don't we overload? Why don't we take it to them like they take it to us? But we don't. And what do we end up losing? We end up losing, but it gets blamed on Harry Kane missing a penalty. But the moment was lost because the game could have been taken away. We wouldn't have needed a penalty to equalise. We'd have been the ones in ascendancy. And that's the difference between a winning, unique manager. Now, Southgate cannot be excluded from the conversation of harmonising the England camp, utilising St George's, utilising the assets within his gift.
So he's had some achievements.
Of course he has.
Of course.
But we've got to win this European Championships.
Win or nothing. It's got to be a win.
Well, for
You've got
Gareth,
to win it.
you don't get an endless array of opportunities. Nobody does. No international manager does. The question is, who do you replace him with? Because that's a question you can. Who's going to replace him? If Southgate dropped down dead today, not suggesting I want him to.
Well, let's say he was to vacate his post today. Put it another way.
He's not going to vacate his post
I was
today.
thinking that when you were talking a moment ago.
Who would you put in?
Who is... There's one for you, actually.
Eddie Howe.
Let's get a
Eddie
few
Howe's
names.
not leaving Newcastle anytime soon, is he?
No, he's not. He's not. I mean, if Gareth was to vacate the job today, and it's purely... it's purely us just having the discussion for discussion's sake, would it be a problem for the FA? Who would be the ideal candidate if Gareth was to go? Gareth's not going to go, but if he was, who would be the ideal candidate? 810 89. Will you raise a glass when the 7-year anniversary comes along? Gareth's 7 years in the job?
I just told you it's 7 year each.
Yeah, all right. You can maybe tell us who you think the ideal candidate would be. Gareth has not gone, he's not going. But if the job was available, who would be the ideal replacement? But hypothetically, we were putting it out there, if he was to vacate the post today, is there an ideal candidate waiting in the wings? Simon is saying, and you're sticking to this, that England under Gareth have got to go to Germany, and nothing other than winning the tournament will keep him in a job, right?
I think so. Unless of course you get to a final, you smash it in a final, and so you get a player sent off, and the game gets taken away from you, and the circumstances detail. And even then, I would say maybe it's time for a change. But by the same logic of making an argument for Southgate to have got the job, you can make an argument for Frank Lampard to be England manager. He's managed, poorly at football clubs. And ultimately has been a football player that played for his country and probably won't cause the FA any trouble. Why wouldn't Frank Lampard be in the discussion for England manager job when Southgate goes?
So is there an exact kind of profile that fits the bill to be the England manager?
Yeah, a big fat winner that understands English players.
Yeah, but you limit yourself as well because you fall into the Matt Letizia camp that he's got to be English.
I think it's quite an interesting argument that Letizia makes, which is that in order to play for your country, you have to come from that country. So in order to represent the country as a manager, surely you should have to come from that country as well. Now, I think it has resonance to it if that was the rules that were being deployed everywhere else in football and globalisation hadn't taken over. I would actually think, yeah, I can see that. But if that argument was being advanced and it was actually then put into play that the only people that could manage the national side of any country was a person from that side, where would we be? Where would we be? Well, we'd have to recruit Steve Holland.
Oh, Steve Holland, yeah. Who's Gareth's number 2 at this time. The international break, of course, will mark Southgate's 7-year anniversary as England manager. If he was to vacate the post, and he's not going to, but if he was, is there an ideal replacement waiting in the wings? So many of you getting in touch about this. Graham Potter, for me, the most realistic choice, says that gentleman there. Harry Redknapp, there is another one. Would Harry come back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, we would see if that was a go. Jim, I think, says Sam, Steve Cooper is a no-brainer for me.
He'd be in the conversation. After
Gareth, Steve Cooper would be in the conversation of that, there's no doubt. Potter's name coming up all the time from Dane, West Ham fan. Why is Steve Cooper's name in the frame, incidentally? And why would his name be in the conversation?
Because I think he's a progressive manager.
He's a man you've called a bridesmaid in the past.
I did 2 or 3 years ago, and new information has usurped that observation. That's why I've changed it. So I think he's a manager that's very capable. He's producing a very decent side at Nottingham Forest. And I think if you look at Nottingham Forest now, despite their loss on the weekend, they look like a side that's beginning to build the sort of squad that's capable of staying in the Premier League and more than capable of staying in it. So he'd be in the conversation.
But Steve Cooper, a big fat winner, as you just described the
you
England manager
and
what he'd need to be.
You asked me what I wanted,
right?
Not what I could have.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, you have to have a conversation with a variety of people. You have to kiss lots of frogs to find yourself in a situation where you might have a prince.
Yeah.
If you have that particular persuasion.
That was lovely. There's Paul. The next England manager would have to be Sean Dyche for me.
I was going to say Dyche. He should be in the conversation as well.
Yeah, he gets the best out of every player that he works with. Front foot, direct football, very well organised defensively. None of this tippy-tappy stuff, says Paul. Sean Dyche would be great. No one there. Now, we didn't stipulate any names in any categories. Not one non-UK manager being mentioned there, not one foreigner being put forward. Having said that, as I speak, Postecoglou, he would be the best. Of course, Antipodean from down under. But
currently, he's the current vote.
You still feel burnt by the Capello experience?
No, I think Capello was an excellent manager, but the wrong approach for the England team. And there needs to be a balance between enforcing a culture of what you think is the right thing for your players to perform in, and a tacit resistance to what they actually have domestically. And he went too far. And if you talk to the players that played, with him or for him, whether it's Darren, Bent, or people of that nature, that talk about the ridiculousness of his regime and the way he went just a little bit too far. Even when I was talking to Di Canio, he talked about Capello and the fact that maybe he read the room a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more to Capello than they saw. It's really about tournament football with Capello. When he had them away for a month, and it may just be that at that time, the transition from footballers going from one set of thinking to another, where they're more cosmopolitan now. They are more cosmopolitan. I know there've been continentals in the Premier League for a long period of time, but I do think footballers now in the 2020s are a much more expansive thinking group than they were.
You've said it in the past, you still stick by it. Is the England manager's job, still the best job in football?
No, it should be. It should be, but how can it be the best job in football when you're working for those clowns at the FA? They've taken it to the point where it's not the best job in English football. They've taken the FA and the governance of football in this country to being the only valuable jobs are the domestic jobs. The domestic game has superseded international football.
They don't have anything to do with results on the pitch.
No, they have everything to do with the structure of football in this country, or so they should. And that's why we have the need for an independent regulator, because a de facto regulator has abdicated responsibility and done bugger all. So the bottom line is it should be, it used to be the job that everybody wanted.
So how should they make it more attractive today?
Recruit better people to run the FA. But the game, that ship has sailed. You're not getting that genie back in a bottle. Maybe if we win a World Cup, maybe if we win a European Championship, and maybe we'll be close to that. And everyone pats themselves on the back because we built St George's. I mean, whoop-de-doo-dah. I mean, the Germans have got 4G pitches up the yin-yang, and we haven't got any of them to play in this country. And yet we've got the richest league.
I think you'll win the Euros next summer in Germany.
Yeah,
I think you'll win it.
I think we should win it.
Do you think you'll win it?
I think we should win it. I think we should win it. I don't think we could win it, which is previous discussion.
No, of course you could win it.
No.
But
It's a difference.
do you think you'll
there's
win
a difference between could and should, right? Before, we could beat the French. We could do well in a tournament. I think we should win this championship.
I'm keeping it simple. Will you win it?
Jim, I mean, that depends how the team plays. If they don't play well, then no, they won't. If they do play well, and the lessons that have gone in the past where key moments come and Southgate doesn't revert to type and makes decisions that are different, then yes, is the answer.
We shall see. I don't know how I feel.
Steve
when
Cooper
I'm out
is
there
Welsh,
with you.
by the way.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. Of course. He is. Well, I said non-UK, didn't I? So 7 years of Gareth coming up. Happy anniversary, Gareth. The Euros next summer. It'll be upon us before we know it.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.